The fluorescent lights in the ICU of Briarwood General Hospital cast harsh beams onto Nelly's pale face. Outside the glass door, Rex, the Belgian Malinois dog, pressed his nose against the observation pane. His eyes shining with an unusual stillness. A low, sweet growl, tightly restrained, rumbled from deep within Rex's throat. "Easy, Rex," Officer Daniel Cruz whispered beside him, his hand gently tightening the leash. But Rex didn't budge. His posture was stiff, ears pinned back, lips trembling in tension. Through the glass, Nelly lay motionless among the tangle of IV tubes and beeping monitors. Just 12 hours ago, the two had been patrolling Westbridge International Airport. That sudden whiff of chemicals, the kind Rex always detected before danger erupted, had led them to a suspect in Warehouse B. The investigation had quickly spiraled into something far more complex and dangerous. Now, Nelly was fighting for her life, and Rex couldn't shake the sense that the danger wasn't over. Inside, Dr. Preston was adjusting the IV drip hooked to Nelly. Instantly, Rex growled again. Daniel gave the leash another gentle tug. But Rex remained unmoved. That scent, chemicals, danger, disturbingly familiar, now clung to Preston's uniform. Every time Preston entered the room, Nelly's vital signs would inexplicably destabilize. Rex couldn't speak, but the cloud of memory from the scene still lingered, and in his eyes was the unmistakable glint of recognition. Something was terribly wrong with the way this doctor was treating his partner. And Rex knew, the time was coming. Just 12 hours ago, Lieutenant Nelly and Rex were patrolling Westbridge International Airport. As they did every day, the pair moved through security checkpoints and cargo bays, with Rex always leading, nose constantly at work. Then Rex stopped abruptly, ears snapping upright, his body shuddering. Nelly hesitated, stepping closer, one hand on the leash. "What is it, Rex?" Rex clenched his teeth, a low growl pressing from his throat. The scent of chemicals, sharp, like acetone, like sterile pharmaceuticals, like something they'd encountered during past illegal shipments. She didn't need to give a command. Rex was already darting toward Warehouse B, cutting diagonally through rows of containers and glass racks. When they reached the source of the smell, Rex suddenly halted, mouth slightly open, staring at a suspicious stack of goods. Inside weren't food supplies or medications, but boxes labeled with high-grade medical branding, though one package had been violently torn open. Inside was a small device bearing a QR code and chemical symbols now fully exposed. Nelly promptly radioed for backup, but in that brief moment, Rex stiffened again, turning around, ears pivoting toward the rear. It was in that exact instant that the sealed airlock door suddenly burst open. Gunfire erupted toward Rex. She lunged to shield him, and both of them tumbled behind a nearby container. In the final seconds before losing consciousness, she saw Rex still lurching forward toward the suspect. Despite the shouting, the sound of boots pounding on the cement floor, and then a short, sharp scream. Then darkness. Now, in the hospital, Rex hadn't forgotten. His eyes were still haunted by the figure of the imposter now pretending to be an ICU doctor. That same chemical scent, the way he adjusted the dosage in the IV. Everything was wrong, and Rex was waiting, completely still. Something was about to happen. Because for Rex, the mission wasn't over, and Nelly wasn't safe yet. Rex growled fiercely, his eyes locked on the ICU room door. The tension in the dog's gaze made Daniel, the on-duty officer, uneasy. "Easy, Rex." Daniel gently tightened the leash, but Rex showed no sign of calming. His 4 paws were planted firmly on the cold tile floor, his entire body taut like a drawn bow. Through the glass, Dr. Preston was adjusting another IV bag beside Nelly's bed. The scent, that scent. Rex had smelled it first at the airport, a mixture of synthetic chemicals. The same kind that had led them into the ambush that left Nelly injured. And now, it lingered faintly on that doctor. A warning beep rang out. Nelly's heart rate had suddenly dropped. "Damn it," Daniel whispered, eyes wide. Dr. Olivia Chong, a young resident working nearby, immediately stepped over. She had experience working with therapy dogs at the hospital. But Rex's reaction was something else entirely. Not worry, not fear, but warning. "How long has he been acting like this?" she asked. Her gaze locked on Rex. "Just today," Daniel said. And only when Dr. Preston goes near Nelly. Dr. Chong looked into the ICU. Her face suddenly tightened. I've worked this unit for 3 years. I've never seen that man before. At that moment, the eyes of Dr. Preston met Rex's through the glass. For a split second, Daniel saw it clearly, recognition. And then, fear. Then the man turned and left the room. Faster than normal, heading toward the elevator at the end of the hallway. Stop him, Dr. Chong shouted. But Rex had already acted. With one violent jerk, the leash slipped from Daniel's hand. Rex shot forward like a bolt of lightning, his claws thundering against the floor. A shriek echoed from the closing elevator, the sound of a man just seized by the steel jaws of a loyal warrior. Dr. Olivia Chong pushed through the crowd gathering in front of the elevator. Her face now devoid of hesitation. Check his ID immediately, she commanded, her voice sharp as steel. A security guard quickly grabbed the wallet from the coat pocket of the man now writhing on the floor. Deep bite marks visible on his arm. When the wallet was opened, the name on the ID was not Dr. Preston. It was Nathan Bell, a former medical worker, but from a different hospital nearly 100 miles from Briarwood. Daniel read the name aloud. Rex kept growling, teeth bared, eyes fixed on the imposter. We need a blood test on Nelly right now, Dr. Chong called out, spinning around and rushing back to the ICU. Lock the room. No one goes in or out without my direct order. Daniel, tightening Rex's leash, ran after her, as Nathan Bell was dragged away in handcuffs. His face twisted in pain, but his eyes still held a cold, sinister smirk. He didn't need to say it, this wasn't over. Inside the ICU, the atmosphere was taut like a drawn string. The real doctor, Dr. Victor Reynolds, had just returned from his break and bent over Nelly's chart. His eyebrows furrowed deeper with every page. The IV orders and meds are all wrong, he muttered. Overdosed. There's no way this was accidental. Rex whined softly, nudging Daniel's leg with his nose. Dr. Chong noticed and immediately knelt beside the dog. What is it, Rex? What are you trying to tell us? Rex looked toward the corner of the room, specifically, at the small medical refrigerator by the wall. Dr. Chong followed his gaze. And froze. Daniel, let Rex do what he does at crime scenes. Daniel gave the command. Find it, Rex. Find the target. Without hesitation, Rex approached the fridge, sniffing carefully. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just sat down silently, eyes fixed on the base of the unit. Target confirmed, Daniel said. Bottom of the fridge. A technician was called in to remove the lower panel of the refrigerator. And there it was, a small package taped to the cooling unit. Inside were several vials of unmarked liquid, except for a single symbol, a tattoo they'd seen before, on the hand of a drug trafficker at the airport the day Nelly was shot. Daniel clenched his fist. This is bigger than an attempted murder. Much bigger. Dr. Chong whispered, almost to herself. They've been watching her. They knew exactly who would dig too deep. At that moment, just outside the ICU, a shadow flickered past the narrow hallway window. Night had fallen, but Rex hadn't moved from his spot. And he knew. The battle had only just begun. Rex sat beside the ICU bed, his head resting gently against Nelly's arm, where she still lay unconscious. Her skin pale, but her breathing now steadier. Dr. Olivia Chong stood nearby, eyes fixed on the monitor tracking Nelly's vitals. The dark circles under her eyes revealed a sleepless night. Yet there was no sign she intended to leave. She's fighting, Dr. Chong murmured, almost as if whispering to herself, or to Rex. Just like the time she saved you when everyone else had given up. Rex let out a soft whine and nudged his nose against Nelly's hand. It wasn't just worry, it was a reminder. A familiar melody of loyalty only souls who've stood side by side between life and death could ever hear. Dr. Chong opened Nelly's medical file, her eyes scanning line by line. 5 years with the K-9 unit. She muttered, highest arrest record in the division. But what caught my attention were the reports about her digging too deep into cases that looked routine. Her gaze rested on Rex. And a note from the training team, successfully rehabilitated a service dog previously dismissed for being too uncontrollable. She believed in this dog's potential. Rex tilted his head slightly, eyes flickering with recognition. It's not just a job. Dr. Chong whispered, you two were chasing something bigger. A bolt of lightning slashed across the night sky outside the window. For a moment, the white light illuminated the room, where Rex still lay beside Nelly like an unyielding warrior. And then, a faint sound, like the subtle roll of a medication cart down the hallway just beyond the door. Rex's ears shot up, his body tensed. Dr. Chong didn't hear it, but Rex did. In his mind, fragments of memory flashed by, the scent of chemicals at the airport warehouse, the hurried footsteps, the SUV tailing them that night, and most of all, the face of the man who posed as a doctor, Nathan Bell. Rex trembled, not from fear, but from awareness. Nelly had once taught him, the most dangerous man isn't the one holding the gun, it's the one who smiles while pouring the poison. Suddenly, Nelly's finger twitched. Rex pressed closer, his eyes filled with anticipation. And then, her hand gently clenched the fur at Rex's neck. A positive response, Dr. Chong shouted, rushing to the bedside. She's waking up. She shone a light into Nelly's eyes to check her pupillary reflexes, while Rex never took his eyes off the face of his partner. A deep breath escaped from her lips. Nelly Carter was coming back. And as her eyes met Rex's for the first time, a faint smile appeared on her dry, cracked lips. No words were needed. She remembered everything. Nelly opened her eyes. The blurry light from the ICU ceiling made her blink repeatedly, trying to regain her sense of direction. The first sensation wasn't pain, but a warm weight resting on her arm. Rex, welcome back, Nelly, Dr. Chong said softly, her voice a mix of relief and emotion. You fought hard. Nelly tried to move. Her muscles felt rusted. She glanced to the side. Rex was still there, eyes locked on her, ears perked, fully alert. Her old partner had never left her side, not then. Not now. Rex, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Did we get him? Daniel Cruz entered the room at that moment, holding a file in his hand. Tension still etched across his face. We've detained the fake doctor, Nathan Bell, he said, but he hasn't said a word. No lawyer, no requests. It's like he's just one link in a bigger chain. Nelly nodded faintly, her voice breaking into fragments. Not just him. They've been watching us. Since the airport. Since Meridian. Dr. Chong and Daniel exchanged glances. Exactly what they had begun to suspect, that the airport attack was only the surface. Rex suddenly whined, not loud, but unmistakably a warning. Nelly tensed instinctively. Something's wrong. Daniel moved toward the door. But Rex wasn't looking outside. He was staring inside the room. At something, behind the medical cabinet. Dr. Chong stepped closer, frowning, and crouched down. There's nothing. Her hand brushed against an odd piece of tape, tucked deep behind the cabinet's leg. She leaned in further, shining her phone flashlight. A small black device. No label. No wires. A transmitter. Daniel immediately called security while Dr. Chong, using sterile gloves, carefully removed the device. Someone planted this to monitor the room. Could be audio, maybe even video. Nelly clenched her teeth. They haven't given up. Rex let out a deep growl. Eyes locked on the glass door. Out in the hospital hallway, a man in medical scrubs was silently retreating toward the elevator. None of them had seen him before. Daniel, Nelly rasped, pushing herself upright. Lock this floor down. No one comes or goes without verification. I need a recorder. And a central oxygen line map. Daniel didn't ask why. He simply nodded, pulled out his phone, and got to work. In that fleeting moment, Dr. Chong looked at Nelly, her eyes barely awake from a coma, yet sharp as honed steel. You sure about this? She asked. Nelly placed a hand on Rex's head. I didn't survive just arrest. The soft yellow light fell quietly over the figures of the officer and her dog. No longer just chasing criminals, but now tracking the threads of a conspiracy far beyond the reach of the law. In the basement of Briarwood Hospital, the backup power system had just switched to energy-saving mode. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting a maze of dim patterns across the old tile floor. In the darkness, a voice crackled softly through the internal radio, not from the medical team, nor from operations control. ICU level has been compromised. Device signal lost. Target has regained consciousness. A man in a maintenance uniform set down the radio and removed his gloves. There were no wrenches in his pocket, only a glass syringe filled with an amber-colored liquid. On his wrist, a small tattoo of 3 interlocking circles, the same symbol found on evidence from the toxic trafficking case at the airport. He opened a digital map of the hospital on his phone. Main ventilation junction, between the ICU and the blood lab. Objective: destroy the evidence. Up in the ICU, Rex suddenly perked his ears. Then lunged toward the door, claws scraping hard against the glass. Nelly understood immediately. Someone's accessing the ventilation system. Daniel, just returning with an FBI tactical team, gave the order. Seal all routes leading to the lab. Internal network still online? Dr. Chong shook her head. Disabled, but I've got the system layout on my personal laptop. Nelly clenched her left hand. They're trying to destroy my blood sample, to erase the poison traces and the chemical proof. Rex, lead the way. Without waiting for a second command, Rex darted forward, nose pressed to the floor, tracking the faint chemical trail. Sweat soaked Nelly's back as she rose, gripping a cane, following Rex with slow but steady steps, for the first time since waking. She left the hospital room not to survive, but to fight. Down the south corridor, a steel door sat slightly ajar. The disguised maintenance man entered the blood storage unit. No cameras, no guards, just a deep freeze unit humming in the corner. He pulled a small vial from his jacket, not for injection, but to pour into the evidence. A growl sliced through the air. Rex. Before the man could react, a muscular blur launched from the shadows. Rex leapt, clamping his steel jaws around the man's arm and slamming him back against the freezer. Nelly stepped into the room, gun drawn. Don't move. Blood dripped from the man's wrist. His eyes wide, a mix of shock and despair. You have no idea what you're caught up in, he hissed. I don't need to, Nelly said coldly. Only need to stop it. Within 20 minutes, the FBI had locked down the entire basement. The blood sample was rushed to a federal forensics center. The test revealed markers matching a never-before-disclosed compound, an experimental neurochemical biocontrol agent, covertly developed by a shadow defense contractor. An international conspiracy, seated at an airport, had quietly bled into the healthcare system, and nearly killed the only person who'd gotten close to the truth. In a secure room, Nelly sat beside Rex. Her wounds hadn't fully healed, but her eyes burned with undimmed fire. They know we're still alive, she said to Rex, stroking his head. And now, they're afraid. Rex growled softly from deep within his chest, eyes locked on the darkness beyond the door. Because he knew, the real war had only just begun. 3 days after the failed break-in at the hospital, national media began leaking information about a twisted pharmaceutical smuggling network. But the deepest part of the iceberg remained hidden, the thing Nelly had seen with her own eyes. And Rex had smelled. A biological weapon disguised under a medical label. At the FBI Westbridge field office, Nelly sat in the interrogation room, a dim light shining down on a thick stack of files. Beside her, Rex lay quietly but alert, outfitted with a new armor vest from the Special Protection Program. Embedded with survival chips and biosensors, Agent Vega slid a file folder across the table. Inside were satellite images, aviation charts, and personnel logs from international hospital entries and exits. One name stood out: Dr. Elias Vorn, a senior researcher once employed by Meridian Pharmaceuticals, but presumed dead in a car crash in Prague 3 years ago. He's not dead, Nelly said firmly, pointing at a photo. Vorn stepping onto a private jet at a secondary airstrip near Westbridge, just days before the Terminal B shooting. And I believe he's the one behind the chemical that was injected into me. Vega nodded, his expression grave. If you're right, then we're no longer dealing with a drug cartel. We're facing a rogue bioweapons program. At that very moment, inside a medical coordination hub in Chicago, a medical intern retrieved a vial of vaccine from a refrigerated container. The label looked completely legitimate. But under a microscope, the same 3 interlocking rings logo could be seen, identical to the symbol Rex had traced from the hospital refrigerator days earlier. The supply chain was still active. They hadn't stopped. That night, Nelly stood on the hospital rooftop, cold wind rustling her coat. She gazed silently over the city. Every light, every street, could be part of something much larger. Rex sat beside her, his eyes tracking the convoy of medical trucks heading west across the city. Do you feel it? Nelly asked, not breaking her stare. Another wave is coming. Rex didn't bark. He simply let out a low growl, as if to say, I know. At that exact moment, Nelly's phone buzzed. An encrypted message from the Rapid Response Unit. Anomalous biotic signal detected at Mobile Medical Unit Number 9. Data matches toxin injected into Carter. Code red alert. Immediate verification required. Nelly pocketed the phone. No more rest. Rex. Rex rose to his feet. Shoulders squared. Ready. No sirens. No uniforms. No orders from above. Just her and him. The only one who still remembered the real scent of evil. The new war had begun. And this time, they would not be allowed to hide in the shadows. Mobile Medical Unit Number 9 sat on the far western edge of Westbridge, a place seemingly forgotten by time. Amidst rundown warehouses and abandoned rail lines, the silver-white container clinic reflected the headlights from Nelly's car, casting an eerie silence across the scene. Too quiet. Rex, sweep the area. She signaled silently with her hand. Rex darted forward, nose low to the ground, gliding like a shadow through beams of broken light. A low growl escaped him as he neared the container's main door. There's a scent, Nelly murmured. She approached, fingers brushing the grip of her gun. The door was unlocked, an odd detail for a facility storing some of the most dangerous biosamples in the country. Nelly pushed the door open. Darkness. Rows of industrial freezers lined both sides, powered by a portable generator. Dim LED glows blinked from control panels. But Rex wasn't looking at them. He was staring toward the back of the container. And there stood a man. No medical coat, no ID badge. Who are you? Nelly asked calmly, but her finger had already tensed on the trigger. The man smiled, cold and sharp. I'm just the cleaner, he said, but today, I got here a little late. In a flash, his hand reached for a small button mounted to the freezer's side, a trigger device. Rex growled and leapt before Nelly could react. She fired. The bullet tore into the man's shoulder, sending him crashing to the floor. Too late. The freezer emitted a rapid beep. Countdown initiated. 2 minutes. 30 seconds. Nelly charged forward. Rex, evacuate protocol, she shouted, signaling for Rex to retreat. But he didn't move. He looked at her, then at the freezer, where the biodispersal detonator was counting down. She understood. Rex wouldn't leave. He'd already scented the primary source. All right, Nelly said, panting. Together. In less than a minute, they located the biodiffuser, concealed behind a false freezer panel. Rex used his teeth to yank loose a cable linked to the heating core. Nelly yanked the main power cell. Beep. System offline. The countdown froze at 11 seconds. Silence. She collapsed to the floor, sweat dotting her brow. Still alive. She chuckled, stroking Rex's neck. Guess I owe you another medal. Rex pressed his head into her lap. His breath was warm, steady, but his eyes never left the body of the cleaner. When the special ops team arrived, the scene was already secure. In her report to the FBI, Nelly added one critical note. The assailant confessed to being a Level 2 operative in the organization. At least 3 command tiers remain unidentified. That night, in the flickering glow of a monitor at the Federal Coordination Center, an anonymous email was sent. Subject: Rex is the breach. If he's not neutralized, we lose the entire operation. Nelly didn't know who received it, but Rex could feel it, in every breath, in every shadow across the city. The war wasn't over, but next time, they would be the ones hunting. The wall clock had just ticked over to 3 a.m. when Nelly's phone rang. No name, no number, just a string of distorted symbols, as if encrypted. Rex, lying at the foot of the bed, instantly stood up, ears erect, eyes gleaming like polished glass. Nelly answered. A low, distorted voice came through. We know you're holding the backup data from Westbridge. We will retrieve it, through you, or your dog. Nelly didn't respond. She slowly set the phone down, eyes cold as steel. Rex, on your feet. No second command needed. Within 20 minutes, Nelly and Rex were inside a temporary underground bunker beneath an abandoned research facility, where the analysis data from Station 9 had been stored on an air-gapped SSD. On the screen before her, a national map of counterfeit medical containers in motion. A perfectly disguised network transporting bioweapons under the guise of humanitarian aid. All lines pointed to one place. Echo Point. A decommissioned airstrip between Nevada and Arizona. Supposedly shut down in 2006. But according to the data, there was weekly activity. Rex let out a low hiss, a warning. He turned sharply. Someone was here. 3 shadows. No footsteps. No flashlights. One raised a hand. Click. Safety off. Nelly rolled her wrist. Drew her weapon. Bang. Rex exploded forward like a living bullet. The first man went down. The second didn't even finish turning before Nelly sliced a clean arc from hip to wrist. The third, wearing a lab respirator and silenced pistol, snarled. "We were ordered not to let you leave alive." Then that order just failed. Nelly fired. One shot. Straight through the protective lens. Rex lunged, pinning the man to the ground as Nelly disarmed him. After binding the intruders and marking the scene for the federal cleanup team, Nelly and Rex exited the bunker. In her hand was the re-encrypted data drive, tucked inside a dog food container. Outside, dawn had not yet broken. Rex walked with slow, deliberate steps, as if sensing. This time, they weren't just defending, they were hunting. On the late-night radio, a breaking news bulletin aired. Multiple hospitals across 4 states experienced simultaneous power outages last night. The FBI has not confirmed whether this is linked to last month's toxin leak at Westbridge Airport. Nelly switched the radio off. She looked at Rex. Echo Point is the endgame. Either the end of us, or the end of them. Rex turned his head toward her. Nodded slightly. The sun hadn't risen, but the hunt had already begun. The road to Echo Point wasn't on any map. Only sand, rock, and a collapsed radar station buried in silence. Nelly stopped the car 300 meters from a rusted fence. In the passenger seat, Rex remained still, his eyes sweeping across the desert like a warrior who had lived here all his life. Nelly opened the trunk and lifted a signal detector. The drive hidden inside Rex's food container blinked to life. Signal received. Welcome back. Gate 3 is open. Rex let out a low hiss. They know we're coming, Nelly said. She nodded. And they want us in. The entrance at Gate 3 was a concealed sliding door beneath a layer of fake stone. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The elevator moved slowly, as if being watched second by second. Nelly checked her magazine. Rex waited for the command. When the door opened, they didn't enter a lab. They stepped into an underground conference hall, the size of a gymnasium. Ceiling lit with rows of cold LED lights. Glass tables displayed genetic models, virus distribution maps, and drone photos of Nelly and Rex. From behind a digital curtain, a tall man stepped forward, wearing a lab coat, but eyes sharp as razors. "Welcome, Officer Carter, or should I say, Lieutenant Nelly." Dr. Adrian Vale, a name that had appeared only once, in the classified file Alyssa left behind. A man once accused of chemical-based neural control experiments. Before disappearing, under government protection. Nelly took a step forward. "This is where you turned the airport into a bioweapons hub." Vale smiled. "We weren't shipping, we were testing. Hospitals were our labs. Passengers were our rats. And you were the variable." Rex growled. Vale pressed a button. The back doors opened, and out of the shadows walked a dog. Another Malinois, eyes glowing red, a neural control device strapped to its neck. Its fur shaved in strips. Strange scars lining its body. Nelly froze. "You're turning dogs into killers with remote-triggered obedience?" Vale tilted his head. "Not killers. Test subjects. Measuring instinct versus programming." Rex stepped forward. No growl. No bark. Just a gaze. One warrior recognizing a comrade twisted into a weapon. Nelly whispered, "Rex, don't attack. It's not his fault." Vale chuckled. "This sentimentality is exactly why we rejected emotional-based training." Nelly raised her hand, but didn't draw her weapon. "Rex, he's still in there." The Malinois snarled. Eyes flickered chaotically. But he didn't strike. He trembled. Vale frowned, pressing harder on the remote. In that instant, Rex lunged. Not at the other dog, but at Vale's hand. The crunch of metal and plastic echoed as Rex shattered the control device. Scrambling the signal, the other Malinois collapsed to the floor. Whimpering, no longer hostile, the red glow fading from its eyes, as if released. Vale screamed, but Nelly had already pulled the trigger. One round, straight to his shoulder. He staggered back, stunned. Experiments over. Doctor. Rex stood guard over the trembling Malinois. It licked the blood on the floor. Eyes now those of a frightened, lost animal. Nelly knelt down, resting a hand on its head. Welcome back. You're safe now. The cleanup was handled by the FBI. Vale was arrested. Echo Point was sealed. All bioweapons records were sent to Washington. But Nelly knew, this wasn't over. Because Rex still stayed alert every time a stranger got too close. And that night, as wind passed through Echo Point one final time before lockdown, a faint signal pulsed outward, toward another station, deeper in the desert. 3 days after the Echo Point raid, a strange signal was detected, faint, unstable, broadcasting from a coordinate that didn't exist on any military map. The location, according to Alyssa's old classified files, was marked with 3 letters. GPX. Genesis Protocol X. A program the government never acknowledged. No name, no public funding. But what Nelly and Rex encountered at Echo Point was just the surface. Nelly drove through the Nevada desert. No roads. Just dust, sand, and the distance between life and death. Beside her, Rex hadn't closed his eyes once. Not from alertness, but memory. The chemical smells, the cold white rooms, the creatures like him, turned into weapons. The car stopped when the GPS signal went completely dead. In front of them, a canyon. Within it, a steel door, half buried like a sunken submarine. No lock, no guards, only a touchscreen keypad, glowing with the message, "Welcome back, Unit -9, UNIT 9. Nelly whispered. She glanced at Rex. In the training archives, Rex was the 9th test subject of the Genesis project, secretly rescued by Alyssa. His identity erased, retrained using emotional bonding, a method the military once dismissed as soft. Nelly placed her hand on the scanner. The door opened. Inside, a different world. The corridor ahead didn't look like a lab. It was too clean, too quiet. Every step echoed like it was being listened to. The walls didn't reflect light. They absorbed it. Across a screen at the far end, simple words appeared. "Well done, Rex. Are you ready to return to what you were made for?" Nelly drew her gun instantly. Rex growled. They weren't alone. From the shadows emerged 3 figures, no uniforms, no name tags. But their eyes were void. And behind them, 3 Malinois, like Rex, but expressionless, soundless, deadly in their mechanical precision. "Alpha Unit, Beta Unit, Gamma Unit," said a voice from the wall speakers. No emotion, no error, no hesitation. Rex stood in front of Nelly, guarding her. One of the dogs lunged. Rex didn't retreat, didn't bite. He spun, using his body to deflect the incoming attacker. A defensive move, not lethal. The other 2 moved to flank him. Nelly fired. The bullet hit one of the handlers in the leg. A burst of digital screeching. The control code shattered. All 3 Malinois convulsed, screamed, then collapsed. Not dead, just freed. From the screen behind them, a man's voice echoed, cold, emotionless. "So you've made your choice. You won't return. You won't embrace your purpose." Nelly stepped closer. "This experiment is over. Now it's your turn to step into the light." The voice darkened. "I've seen it. Your dog taught the weak to reject perfection. But you won't stop us. Genesis isn't a project. It's a new era." Nelly hurled an EMP device at the screen. A blinding flash. System offline. A safe door opened behind them. An emergency tunnel. Genesis protocol had been exposed. But it wasn't over. Outside, the sun set behind the mountain ridge. Rex sat at the edge of the cliff. The wind blew gently across the new badge on his collar. K9 Unit 9 not programmed. Chosen.